Hare Krishna. So today we have our meeting number 22, and today we will study two chapters, chapters 3.10 and 3.11. So the topics for today are the divisions of the creation of Brahma and the universal time. So very interesting topics today. So we start from here. So the divisions of the creation of Brahma. So after hearing about the prayers of Brahma and the blessings that he received from the Lord, Vidura wanted to know about the subsequent creations of Brahma. So he asks, that's the first verse of the 10th chapter. So he says, Vidura said, "O great sage, please let me know how Brahma, the grandfather of the planetary inhabitants, created the bodies of the living entities from his own body and minds after the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead." Jai. So Maitreya starts his answer by describing how, after meeting the Lord, Brahma engaged in penances for 100 celestial years more before starting the creation. So, in his purport, Prabhupada explains that he was not just doing meditation this time, like in the period of 1000 celestial years that he was meditating before meeting the Lord. But in these 100 years, he was engaged in direct devotional service to the Lord. So he meditated two times, like 1000 years, then 100 years more, like celestial years. So after this period, his concentration was broken by strong cosmic winds that made both the Garbhodaka Ocean and the Universal Lotus tremble. So there was this big disturbance in the universe. So the lower part of the universe, where the lower planets as well as Bhumandala were supposed to be, was completely flooded. And being in such an awkward situation, Brahma's attention returned to his service of creating the universe. So, having met the Lord and advanced in his devotional service, Brahma he had matured in practical knowledge. So in this way, he perfectly understood what to do. So just as Lord Shiva controls the material mode of ignorance, right, without being affected by it, Lord Brahma he controls the mode of passion, right, also without being directly affected by it. So Srila Prabhupada mentions on 3935 that when Brahma becomes bewildered, for example, as in the past time that he stole the boys and the calves from Krishna, his bewilderment, it happens due to the influence of the internal potency of the Lord, under the influence of the internal energy. So as part of a pastime, and not due to ordinary mode of passion. So at first, Brahma had to fix the conditions of the universe, right? So before the process of secondary creation could take place. So it's mentioned that both the lotus in which he was situated and the water on which the lotus was growing from was trembling due to a very strong and violent wind. So using his power, Brahma could drink the winter as well as this water, fixing the situation. So now, without the disturbance of the cosmic winds and the flood of the Garbhodaka Ocean, then creation could take place. So the first step was to create the planets from the elements contained in the lotus. And this is described on verses 7 and 8. Quote, "Thereafter, he saw that the lotus on which he was situated was spread throughout the universe, and he contemplated how to create all the planets which were previously merged in that very same lotus. Thus engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Brahma entered into the role of the lotus, and as it spread all over the universe, he divided it into 3 divisions of words, and later into 14 divisions, right? That's verses 7 and 8. So Previously, the Lord created both the material elements and the subtle forms of the planet, like in the Virat Rupa. And thus, factually speaking, everything was already created by the Lord. So the work of Brahma that may look so amazing to us, it simply consists in organizing the material elements into the forms conceived by the Lord. So like the Lord made the project already. So Lord Brahma, he just has to construct it, right? We can say. So Prabhupada explains these points in his purport for this same verse. So he says, quote, "The seeds of all the planets in the universe were impregnated in the lotus on which Brahma was situated. All the planets were already generated by the Lord, and all the living entities were also born in Brahma. The material world and the living entities were all generated in seedling forms by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Brahma was to disseminate the same seedlings all over the universe. The real creation is therefore called Sarga, right? Means primary creation. And later on, the manifestation by Brahma is called Visharga, right? That's the secondary creation. So, okay, so this is the end of the quote. So, Brahma he used the material elements from the lotus to create the 14 planetary systems. And these 14 systems are Satyaloka, Tapaloka, Janaloka, and Maharloka. These are the highest planetary systems. Then Swargaloka, Bhuvarloka, Burloka, uh, Atala Loka, Vitala Loka, Sutala Loka, Talatala Loka, Mahatala Loka, Rasatala Loka, and Patala Loka, right? 14. So the planetary systems of Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala are the lower planets, right? Where the demons live. The Earth, as well as other planets that form Burloka or Bhumandala, are called the intermediate planetary systems, right? And Swargaloka is the higher planetary system where the demigods live. So we have Burloka, that is the intermediate planetary system, and then we have uh, uh, Bhuvarloka, that is the place of the Rakshasas and other subtle beings led by Kuvera. That's the place where Kuvera live. So they are in the middle, right? They are between Art and Swargaloka. So they are considered higher than human beings, but lower than the demigods. So they are like in the middle in this case. So all these different planetary systems, they are destroyed at the end of each day of Brahma, and they are recreated at the beginning of the next day. Still higher than these planetary systems are Satyaloka, and that's the planet of Brahma, actually planetary system of Brahma, Tapaloka, Janaloka, and Maharloka. And these four planetary systems, they are inhabited by great sages. And these sages, they are above, the wars between the demigods and the demons. They are in their own platform. They are higher than that. And they spend their time engaged in advanced devotional service. So because of that, these planetary systems, they are not destroyed at the end of the day of Brahma. They survive until the end of the Pararda, until the end of the creation. So, okay, so more about the planetary systems, right? Now, here we have a nice diagram here. So, Swargaloka, Bhuvarloka, Burloka, etc., they're not single planets, right? That's very important. They are planetary systems, and they include, a great number of planets each. So the Art, for example, is part of Burloka, right? And this is the planetary system that includes all the different structures that Srimad Bhagavatam describes as being part of Bhumandala. And although for the demigods, these structures, they appear to be observable as series of concentric islands, for us they appear as different planets. That's how we see them. So the inhabitants of these different planetary systems, they have different levels of consciousness, and as a result, they have different sets of senses. As parts of the population of Kali Yuga, like being part of the glorious population of Kali Yuga, our consciousness is very gross, right? And thus, we have senses that can experience only like gross matter. The demigods, the demons, and also other beings, they have more subtle senses that they can use to perceive different varieties of refined matter that's not visible for us. So it's interesting to note that in modern theories, they predict or they theorize that 95 up to 95% of the mass of the universe is composed of dark matter and dark energy. And these are forms of matter that we can't detect with our senses and instruments, right? They understand that it's there indirectly, but they can't really find it. So this fits with this description of, refined types of matter that we find in the Bhagavatam. So higher beings with subtle senses, they are capable of observing all these subtle forms of matter, and thus they perceive the universe uh, differently from us, right? So just like we like to call our perception of the universe reality, right? What we see, we say, oh, that's reality. But the way we see things is just the way our mind interprets, the electrical signals that our eyes and hands and etc. they transmit to the brain, right? We just receive the signals, the mind interpret it, and okay, that's reality for us. Other species around the universe, they have different sets of senses, and thus reality for them is something completely different than what it is for us. So from these 14 planetary systems, 10 are destroyed at the end of each day of Brahma, right? And this includes all the lower planets, also all the intermediate planets, and also Swargaloka and Bhuvarloka, right? The abodes of the demigods and the Rakshasas and Yakshasas. And so the list includes Swargaloka, Bhuvarloka, Burloka, Atalaloka, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala, right? All these 10, they are destroyed at the end of each day of Brahma. And then why? Why? Right? So the point is that this happens because the ultimate goal of the creation of the universe is to offer an opportunity for the souls to realize their eternal relationship with Krishna. So as time passes and most of the souls in these different planetary systems, they do not engage in devotional service, or at least not as seriously as they should, Lord Ananta, like at the bottom of the universe, he becomes angry, and eventually he destroys all these different planetary systems that are inhabited by materialistic people with the assistance of Lord Shiva. And then all the inhabitants of these planetary systems, they are destroyed, and they have to wait inside the body of Lord Garbhodakashai Vishnu for 4.33, no, 4.32 billion years until the next creation, right? They have to take a nap there. Uh, Only the four highest planetary systems, like Satyaloka, Tapaloka, Janaloka, and Maharloka, they are spared from this destruction, right? And Srila Prabhupada explains the reason on verse 9. He says that, quote, "This is because of the causeless devotional service rendered unto the Lord by their inhabitants, whose existence continues up to the end of Dviparada time, when they are generally liberated from the chain of birth and death in the material world." So they were destroyed at the end of the first parada, or the first half of the life of Brahma. And now they will continue to exist until the end of the Dviparada, until the end of the second half of the life of Brahma. So at that time, these great sages, they will have the opportunity of going back to Godhead together with Lord Brahma, right? Interesting. So another interesting detail that is mentioned in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita is that although Maharloka is spared the destruction, right? At the end of the day of Brahma, it becomes very hot. So this forces its inhabitants to take shelter in Tapaloka, where the conditions are more favorable. So the planetary system is not destroyed, but they have to temporarily relocate. So at the beginning of the next day of Brahma, when the lower planets they are created again by Brahma, these great sages they go down in order to repopulate the universe. So they become the Prajapatis, the progenitors of the next generation of living beings. And this process is described in the Vayu Purana. Interesting, 177. So there it said that Prachahare Purva Kalpe Prachisanjin Chatatravai Anya Pravarta Te Kalpo Jaina Lokat Puna Puna. So it says, quote, first, the Kalpa ends, and subsequently, the Prasandi ends. Then the next Kalpa begins with life imported from Janaloka. This process occurs again and again, right? So this describes this process of the sages of Janaloka coming down to repopulate the universe. So, in other words, Brahma performs the complete creation of the universe as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam 2 times, right? At the beginning of his life and then at the beginning or at the first day of the second half. On other days, the Prajapatis, coming down from Janaloka, they take charge of repopulating the universe, right? So, okay, so now some parallels with modern science, where, what Bhagavata and science agree and what they don't agree. So this description of the creation of the planetary systems described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, with Brahma drinking the wind and so on, it may sound like mythological, right, to many modern people. But modern studies, they also conclude that there was a lot of chaos in the initial formation of the solar system, like conditions that were not suitable for the existence of life, right? And then later on, these conditions, they subdued and the formation of the planets and so on, everything started. So we should keep in mind that the descriptions of the Srimad Bhagavatam, they are given according to the sense perception of higher beings. So what Brahma perceived as a strong wind, it could appear to be something different in your plane for us, right? However, we can understand the essence of the description, right? Meaning that there were disturbances and it was fixed, right? Allowing the planets to form and then gradually be populated. There are also many other descriptions that in the scriptures that may sound strange at first. For example, the Vedas mention that there are flying mountains, for example. And at first it may look absurd, how is that flying mountains? Until we realize that there are indeed flying mountains, all over the cosmos in the form of asteroids and so on. So it's actually, quite common, flying mountains, right? So it's also important to notice that the creation of Brahma doesn't happen by magic, but by the manipulation of subtle potencies that result in the gradual formation and organization of the planets. And so that's not a process that happens from night to day, right? That's a gradual process. So modern science attributes the creation of the universe to the mere action of physical laws such as gravity. But the Vedas, they give a more complete explanation, describing the controllers behind the action of such potencies, right? So modern science, they just describe like physics, but the Vedas, they describe also metaphysics. So the explanation is more complete. Of course, the problem is to understand it. That's up to us. But the description is more complete. And then, as we will study in more detail, later on, The dates given in the Puranas for the creation of the universe, the creation of the solar system, the mass extinctions, the destruction of the solar system, and so on, they're actually all very close to the numbers given in the latest study in modern science. So, for example, according to the Puranas, the creation of the universe started 13 billion 819 million years ago. And the latest modern estimation, and this is from 2018, Agnin et al., right? That's a very recent, that's for like a few years ago, is 13 trillion 801 billion years. 801 million years, like 13.801 billion years. So is 13.819 billion years and 13.801 billion years. So the difference is just 0.0135%, right? It's like 13% of 1%, right? So based on such similarities, we are forced to agree that other descriptions given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, they must also be correct. This book must be written by people who knew what they were speaking about. Otherwise, these numbers, they will not be so similar to numbers that the scientists, they took hundreds of years to find, right? So, okay, so the nature of material time. So, after hearing about the creation of the planetary systems, Vidura asks about the workings of material time. So he says, quote, Vidura inquired from Maitreya, "O my lord, O greatly learned sage, kindly describe eternal time, which is another form of the Supreme Lord, the wonderful actor. What are the symptoms of that eternal time? Please describe them to us in detail." So this is 3:10:10. So time is the energy that puts the whole material manifestation in movement. So the influence of time leads to the transformation that both creates and destroy all beings and all material objects, right? So due to the influence of time, everything is created at a certain point due to certain transformations, and these transformations, they continue until their death or destruction, right? So because of time, everything that is material has a beginning and also an end, just like no the universe itself, right, has a beginning and end. So everything spiritual, however, passes through no transformation, right? No changes. And thus, everything that is spiritual has no beginning and no end. So Krishna explains this in the Bhagavad Gita 2:16 with the words Nashato Vijate Bhavo, Na Bhavo Vijate Sata. So Krishna says, those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the existent, uh, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, there is no change. So by non-existent, asat, Krishna refers to everything that is material. And by eternal, sat, Krishna refers to everything that is spiritual. So Srila Prabhupada explains that non-existent, like asat in this context, it doesn't mean false. It just means like temporary or illusory, right? Because this material world, it exists. It's not false, but it is temporary, illusory, and so on. So the word is asat in this sense. So Prabhupada explains more about this point about time in his purport. So I will read here, quote, "The complete universe is a manifestation of varieties of entities, beginning from the atoms up to the gigantic universe itself, and all is under the control of the Supreme Lord in his form of Kala, the eternal time. The controlling time has different dimensions in relation to particular physical embodiments. There is a There is a time for atomic dissolution and a time for the universal dissolution. There is a time for the annihilation of the body of the human being, and there is a time for the annihilation of the universal body. Also, growth, development, and resultant actions all depends on the time factor. Vidura wanted to know in detail the different physical manifestations and their times of annihilation, right, Jai? So, although the universe exists for a limited amount of time, which we can calculate, right? That's 311.04 trillion years. The cycles of creation and destruction of the material universes, they go on following the breath of Mahavishnu. Time is thus eternal in the sense that these cycles of creation and destruction, they have been going on since time immemorial, and it's not possible to trace, when it all began, right? Time is also eternal as an energy, right? Being one of the divine spiritual energies of the Lord. And that's why material time is also called eternal time, right? Because of these factors. It is eternal as an energy and also is eternal because we can't calculate. However, right, so time is eternal as an energy, right? But its effect on matter, right, generating the material universes, it has a beginning, right? So important point. So similarly, the soul is eternally conditioned, right? In the sense that it's not possible to trace the beginning of the soul, the beginning of the conditioning of the soul. And of course, there is no beginning of the soul also. But it's not eternally conditioned in the sense that we were really never out of here. So this is also important to understand. So in his purport, Prabhupada explains that time as an energy is impersonal, right? Although, of course, it also has a personification in the form of Kali. Just how all other energies of the Lord, they have their predominating deities, right? So the energy itself is impersonal, but there is a deity, a person that controls this energy. Time is thus both simultaneously, right? It's impersonal, but at the same time, is personal because there is a predominating deity. Another point, that's another point that Prabhupada explains. He says, quote, the impersonal time factor is a background of the material manifestation as the instrument of the Supreme Lord. It is the ingredient of assistance offered to material nature. No one knows where time began and where it ends, and it is time only which can keep a record of the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material manifestation. This time factor is a material cause of creation and is therefore a self-expansion of the personality of Godhead. Time is considered the impersonal feature of the Lord, right? Unquote. So, apart from the material time or eternal time, there is the absolute time of the spiritual planets. So, this absolute time or spiritual time is continuous, right? Without past and future. Everything spiritual simply exists without beginning and without an end, right? Without past and without future. There is time in the spiritual world in the sense that the inhabitants, they live, one day after the other, and so on. There are different pastimes going on, but there is no time in the sense of an oppressive force that makes everything change and eventually be destroyed, like here, right? So time as past, present, and future is something that exists only in the material world. It exists only here. It's a phenomenon, a local phenomenon, right? In the spiritual world, there is just an eternal present. There is no past, there is no future. Only here we find this, anomaly, we can say. So apart from being characterized by past, present, and future, material time is also cyclical, right? It repeats itself. So the material creation goes through cycles of creation and destruction, and in each cycle, the same basic events repeat. And this happens on each cycle of 4 years, right? Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali Yugas, in a day of Brahma, and in each complete cycle of creation. So we have these different cycles and they repeat. So this is confirmed in verse 13. So, quote, this cosmic manifestation, as it is now, it was the same in the past, and it will continue in the same way in the future, right? Unquote. So the perception of time is also relative, right? That's another interesting explanation that the Vedas explain. So the perception of time is also relative because time is different in different regions of the cosmos. So this brings the possibility of actually time travel. Yeah, it's possible because it's possible to travel to the future by going to some higher planet where time is perceived as going faster than here, right? One example of this happening is narrated in the Mahabharata. This is the story of King Kakudmi. He once went to Brahmaloka with his daughter, Revati, right? And he wanted to ask Brahma about a suitable husband for her. Should I marry her to this or to that? So after spending just what seemed to be a few minutes there in Brahmaloka, Brahma explained to him that millions of years had passed on earth. And all these suitors, all these men that he was considering to marry his daughter, were already dead, right? So much time passed. But of course, this story has a happy ending because Brahma was on the planet, not Brahma, Balarama was on the planet at that time. And Brahma told him to give Revati in marriage to him. So thanks to that, Revati was married to Lord Balaram. But you see, he went to the future. So many books and movies, they speculate about the possibility of traveling to the past, right? But the Vedas explain that this is impossible, no chance, because time is the divine energy of the Lord, and we can't go against it. It's impossible. It's possible, however, to travel to the past, like quote unquote, by going to the future to a point where the events of the past repeat. This is possible. So one can go from Treta Yuga to Satya Yuga, for example, by going to Brahmaloka, waiting a few seconds there, and then coming down by the time of Satya Yuga, the next Satya Yuga starts. So in this sense, one can go to the past, right? So-called past. So this is possible. Interesting possibility. So, as Prabhupada explains, quote, there is a systematic schedule for the perpetual manifestation, maintenance, and annihilation of the material world, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 9:8. Bhuta Gramam Imam Kritsnam Avasham Prakriter Vasat. As it is created now, and as it will be destroyed later on, so also existed in the past, and again will be created, maintained, and destroyed in due course of time. Jai. Now, the effects of, this is the second slide that I forgot to show about time, the second part of the explanation of time. So you can study now if you are quick. Anyway, let's continue. So now the effects of time. So after explaining the nature of material time, Maitreya explained its effects by describing the 9 kinds of creations and the 3 kinds of annihilation, right? That happen because of the influence of time. So the 9 types of creations are divided into two groups. And these are the creations done by the Lord and the creations of Brahma, right? And the creations of the Lord compose the first 6. So it's here on the list. So one is the Mahatattva, right? The Mahatattva is the sum of all material elements and the material modes that interact, creating the other elements, right? Mahatattva. Then number 2 is the false ego. And the false ego leads to the creation of all the other material elements, also material knowledge, activities, and so on. We studied that. Then 3 is sense perception, right? Hearing, touching, vision, etc. And from there, the material elements, right? Material elements, they come from sense perception. Sense perception is created first, then the corresponding material elements are created later as part of the same process. Then number 4 is knowledge and the possibility of performing material activities. You see, this is also created. Uh, 5 is the creation of the demigods and the mind. And 6 is the creation of avidya, right? The material illusion that covers all living beings. And due to this ignorance, the soul forgets, his relationship with the Supreme Lord and is overwhelmed, right, by attachment, pride, hatred, and so on, like all these wonderful emotions, right? And then there are the other 3 that are the creations of Brahma. So number 7, right? 7, 8, and 9, Brahma does. So 7 is the immovable living entities, and this includes different types of trees, creepers, and other types of plants. Number 8 are the lower species of life, and this includes all different species of animals and birds and so on. And the animals, they are divided into a particular way. They are divided into species that have only one hoof, like for example, horse, mule, ass, etc. Species that have split hooves, like cow, goat, buffalo, etc., and also species that have 5 nails in their claws, like dog, jackal, tiger, and so on. And apart from that, from these, we have the birds. Okay, so these are all the animals, just categorized in an interesting way. Then the last one, number 9, are the human beings who have superior intelligence and thus can choose between developing the animal propensities of just eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and so on, or developing spiritual realization, right? So human beings, they have the choice, and thus they are different from the animals. Also, Brahma also creates the demigods. And the demigods, they are sometimes counted as the 10th creation, sometimes not. How is that? The reason is that the creation of the original demigods is already counted as part of the creation of the Lord. And the demigods created by Brahma are just partial manifestations of these primal demigods. That's why, you can count or not according to the point of view. Anyway, no, not so important. Also, the term demigods, deva, right, in this context, in this explanation, it means all the beings that are superior to human beings, right? So see, we have trees, we have animals, we have human beings, and then we have the devas, that is, everyone that is above the human beings. And this includes 1, the demigods, 2, the forefathers, like the Pitris, the inhabitants of Pitriloka, 3, the Asuras, like who live in the lower planetary systems. They are also considered higher than human beings. They have, refined bodies. Then number 4, the Gandharvas and Apsaras. 5, the Yakshasas and Rakshasas, and these are the followers of Kuvera, who live in Bhuvarloka. Then the Siddhas, Charanas, and Vidyadharas, and these are inhabitants of the celestial systems. Then number 7, Bhutas, Pretas, and Pisachas. These are evil spirits that also live in Bhuvarloka, and they are considered superior to human beings because they don't have gross bodies. That's the reason. They are evil, but because they don't have gross bodies, they are considered higher than human beings still. And then number 8 are the Kinnaras. The Kinnaras are superhuman beings from other parts of Bhumandala. And often they act as celestial singers and artists and so on. They're also higher than us in the scale. So all these different types of beings, they have like refined bodies, and they can't be seen by human beings, but they interact with each other, right? So asuras, for example, they are considered lower in the sense of being 80s, right? But and like in the physical sense, we can say, they have bodies similar to the demigods, and they can fight with them for the control of the universe. Sometimes they defeat the demigods, and they assume the control of the universal affairs. For example, Hiranyakashipu, Bali Maharaj, and so on. So not all Asuras are atheists, though, right? Sometimes pure devotees, they take birth as Asuras, like in the case of Prahlada Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, Vritrasura, right? They are still, like for example, Vritrasura, right? He's still called an Asura because he's part of the family of the Asuras, but he's a pure devotee in reality. And these are all described later in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the demigods, they come from Aditi, right? And the Asuras, they originate from Diti, right? So both Diti and Aditi, they are sisters, and they are both wives of Kasyapa Muni, right? So thus, the demons and the demigods, they are more like two separate families than two separate species in this sense. They are considered separate species because they have different consciousness. But no, physically speaking, they are not really different, right? There are even some cases of asuras getting married to demigods and begetting children, like in the case of Vishvarupa. So, like this, we can understand a little bit more about them, right? Interesting. So, apart from the 9 types of creations, there are also 3 kinds of annihilations, right? And these 3 are: one, the final annihilation due to the scheduled time of annihilation of the entire universe, right? At the end of the life of Brahma. Then number 2, the annihilation at the end of each day of Brahma, in which a fire, emanates from the mouth of Lord Ananta and destroys, all the planetary systems up to Swargaloka. That's another annihilation. And there is another one, number 3, that is one's own death due to the karma, right, originating from his activities, is also a form of annihilation, right? Everything ends for us. Like it's kind of particular annihilation, but is also considered, is also counted as that, right? As a form of annihilation. So after describing the nature of time and the effects of time in terms of the material creations, Maitreya, he goes ahead and describes the different units of time, which go from measurements of small fractions of seconds all the way to the universal cycle. So it goes from very small to very big. So it's useful to become familiarized with these units because all the descriptions of periods of times that we find in the scriptures, they are based on these units, right? Nothing like hours and years like we are used to. So we start from here. Units of time starting from the atom. And here we come to chapter 3.11. So the 11th chapter of the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it gives us a condensed explanation of the measurement of time according to the Vedas. And this gives us some context of what time is for us and how it looks on the universal scale of things, right? So all material bodies, right, from the sun to the atom, right, from the biggest to the smallest, are under the influence of the Kala Chakra, right, the material time. All living beings and also all like inanimate objects. Everything is created, everything is destroyed. But the scales of time for different bodies, they can be wildly different. And this description of the units of time that is offered in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is divided into 2 parts, right? So the first are the units of time that are smaller than the lifespan of a human being. And of course, these are the units of time that we use in our practical life, right? We don't measure the time, we do things in kalpas, right? Like we measuring, smaller units of time. So the scale of time that is smaller than the life of a human being is one type, because this is what we use in your practical life, right? And this starts from the Truti, the smallest division of time, according to the Vedas, all the way to the Vatsara, or lunar year. So, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, the smallest particles of material creations are called Parama Anu, or atoms, right? According to the Vedas, small than an atom is not matter, it's energy. That's the view of the Vedas. In science, they have protons and neutrons and so on, and electrons, but according to the Vedas, this is not counted as matter, but as energy. According to the Vedas, it becomes matter when they come together and they form an atom, right? But anyway, so atom in the Vedas are called Parama Anu. So the smallest measurement of time that is mentioned in the Vedas is the chemical reaction that results in the combination of two atoms, right? So two Parama Anus, they combine to form an Anu, like a double atom, and three Anus, they combine to form a Tasera Anu, an hexa atom, like 6 atoms together. So, and the time needed for the combination of three trasarenos, right? Trasareno, like hexatom. So the time needed for the combination of these three tresarenos, like forming a trisareno tricam, and this is a type of molecule that is formed by 18 atoms, is called a truti, right? And a truti is about half a thousandth of a second. It's a very small measurement of time. And so 100 trutis make a Veda, 3 Vedas make a lava, 3 lavas make a Mimesha, 3 Mimeshas make a Ksana, 5 Kshanas make a Kasta, and 15 Kastas make a Lago. And then 15 Lagos make a Danda, and 2 Dandas make a Muhurta, right? So far, we have this table here that you can see. So one truti is this chemical reaction that forms this molecule of 18 atoms, right? So 100 trutis, 1 Veda, 3 Vedas, 1 lava, 300 truti, 3 lavas, 1 Mimesha, 900 truti, 3 Mimeshas means 1 Kshana, 2700 truti, and then 5 Kshanas, 1 Kasta, and this is 13,500 trutis, right? Then 15 castas becomes 1 lago, and this is 202,500 truti, and then 15 lagos make 1 danda or nadika. You can use any of these two names. And these are more than 3 million truti, very big number. So in modern times, a danda is calculated as being 1/13th of a day or night, like 1 day or night divided by 30, divided in 30 parts. In other words, there are 60 dandas in a period of 24 hours, right? 1/30 of half of the day. So 1 day, 24 hours, 60 dandas. So a danda is thus often taken as 24 minutes, right? But the length of the danda, is an astrological unit. So the length of the danda, it varies according to the seasons, because it's according to the duration of the day. If the day becomes shorter in winter, the danda becomes shorter because you divide the day by 30 dandas. So the day becomes shorter, each danda becomes shorter. When the day becomes longer in summer, the dandas become longer, and so on. So these values, they are used for astrological calculations. So when we calculate, time of breaking Ekadasi and so on, is according to these units. However, the Srimad Bhagavatam, it appears to use a different value for the danda, and this value is described in the text. So instead of being a variable unit that changes according to the length of the day, the danda mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam is a fixed unit that can be calculated by a simple experiment that is described in the Bhagavatam, involving a pot of copper on water, right? And this is the verse is 3:11:9. So it's a pot of copper put on water, and this experiment is based on making a copper pot of a certain dimensions and weights with a hole in the middle, also of a precise size. And then when you put this pot in water, the time that it takes to submerge is 1 danda. But of course, you need to be familiar with the units that are mentioned there to be able to do this experiment, right? Since the acharyas defined 1 danda as 30 minutes, it's easier for us to use the clock, right? So this description of this experiment was probably clear for the people of the time, right? Who would be familiar with these measurements that are mentioned there. But it's very hard for us to follow. Just like, a recipe mentioning inches and feet and ounces and stones is very hard to follow for people who are not familiar with such measurements, right? If you don't know how much a stone is, uh, how you are going to follow it, right? However, the main point is that different from the modern danda, right, which is this variable unit of around 24 minutes, the danda mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam is a fixed unit that is calculated by our previous acharyas as approximately 30 minutes, right? So this danda is also called nadika and is different from the astrological danda that is different, right? 24 minutes and is variable. So this makes sense because all the smaller units that are mentioned here, they are calculated according to the measurement of the danda, like they are all fractions of a danda. And it will not make any sense that they will become shorter or longer according to the length of the day, right? A truti, for example, is a unit fixed at the time of a chemical reaction. And it takes always the same time, right? Regardless of the length of the day or night. This doesn't influence, right, the speed of chemical reactions, right? So this proves that it's a fixed unit, and our acharyas fix it as about 30 minutes. So that's how we calculate it. And then, okay, so in this way we have 1 danda, 30 minutes, 1 lagu, 2 minutes, 1 kasta, 8 seconds, 1 ksana, 1.6 seconds, 1 vimesha, 0.533 seconds, 1 lava, 0.177 seconds, 1 veda, 0.0592 seconds, and 1 truti, 0.000 592 seconds, right? Means that's like more or less half of 1,000th of a second, right? So very small unit of time. So the discussion about the length of the danda is important because some commentators, they make calculations based on a danda being 24 minutes, and thus they end up with incorrect values for all the units that are mentioned in this chapter, right? So the fact that the Bhagavatam mentions a danda as a fixed unit of approximately 30 minutes instead of 24 minutes as in astrology, it becomes clear when we calculate the larger units of time, right? And now we come to the big units. So 2 dandas make a muhurta, 3 muhurtas make a prahara, 8 praharas make an anahi, or a set of day and night, like 24 hours. 15 ahanis make a paksa, this is a fortnight, and 2 paksa make a masa, lunar month, right? Masa, chatur masa, right? 4 months. Literally means 4 months. And 1 masa, 1 lunar month, it equals to 1 day in Pitriloka. And 6 masa makes 1 ayana, and that's a half an year. And 2 ayanis make a vatsara, or a lunar year, right? 360 days. and this is a day and night for the demigods. So with this, we come to the scale of time that we are, used to dealing with in day-to-day life, right? So here we have two dandas, one muhurta, right? 1 hour, three muhurtas, one prahara, 3 hours. And again, there is the difference between the muhurta mentioned in the Bhagavatam, that is 1 hour, and the astrological muhurta that we use for many different times of calculation according to times of the day and so on. But these are two different things, right? So two dandas, one muhurta, three muhurtas, one prahara, and these are 3 hours. Three praharas, one ahani, 24 hours. 15 ahanis is equals one paksa, that is a fortnight. Two paksa, one masa, months. And this is one complete day and night in Pitriloka. 6 masa becomes one ayanam, and that's half of the year. One complete movement of the sun, right? From south to north, one full like half a year. And 2 ayana means one vatsara, right? Lunar year. And and this is 360 days, or 1 day and night for the demigods, right? So human beings, they live for 100 of such years, right? Our life is fixed in maximum 100 vatsara, right? Vatsara. However, higher beings, they have much larger lifespans, and they also have much larger units of time. So Maitreya, he ends this part with the description with a very beautiful verse. This verse says that time affects only conditioned souls. Pure devotees of the Lord who identify with their eternal identities as servants of Krishna, they live in the absolute time, and therefore they are not affected by past, present, and future of the material world. Quite interesting, right? So, quote, O Vidura, the sun enlivens all living entities with his unlimited heat and light. He diminishes the duration of life of all living entities in order to release them from their illusion of material attachment, and he enlarges the path of elevation to the heavenly kingdom, and thus moves in the firmament with great velocity. And therefore, everyone should offer him respects once every 5 years with all ingredients of worship. Jai. And now we come to the really big units, the cosmic units of time. So the second part of Maitreya's explanation, it describes the larger cycles of time, which measure the duration of time of the inhabitants of higher planetary systems, right? Many of which, many live for many kalpas, right? So this part starts with the inquiry of Vidura. So Vidura asks, quote, Vidura said, I now understand the life durations of the residents of the Pitta planets and heavenly planets, as well as that of the human beings. Now, kindly inform me of the durations of life of those greatly learned living entities who are beyond the range of a kalpa, right? And these are the inhabitants of Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Brahmaloka who live more than 1 day of Brahma. So, different from modern theories that conclude that modern human beings are the result of like a long evolutive process, right? Starting from the, unicellular organisms and so on. And, a process that they describe as, happening by chance. The Vedas, they explain that modern humans are actually the fruit of a devolutive process. So the idea given in the Vedas is that our planet goes through a cyclic sequence of 4 cycles, like Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. So our planet is populated by perfect human beings at the beginning of Satya Yuga, and then it slowly degrades up to a point of, complete degradation by the end of Kali Yuga, right? So this cycle is the Divya Yuga. So Satya Yuga lasts for 4,800 celestial years. Remember, one day in the celestial planets is 1 year for us, right? 360 days. Therefore, 1 year for them is 360 years here, right? You multiply for 360 to get years in the celestial planets. So, Satya Yuga lasts for 4,800 celestial years, right? Each celestial years corresponds to 360 years of our time. And therefore, Satya Yuga lasts for a total of 1,728,000 years, right? And during this period, there is a gradual decline in the level of consciousness of like humanity, which in time leads humanity to the second age in the cycle, and that's Treta Yuga or the Silver Age. So during this period, people become interested in economic development, right? Agriculture becomes very prominent. Society is divided into different classes. And then we have pious kings, watching over the well-being of the general population. Most of the people in this age are still quite pious, right? And their level of consciousness is sufficient to award them bodies capable of living for 10,000 years. Jai. And the preferred method for self-realization for Treta Yuga is the performance of elaborate Vedic sacrifice. So Treta Yuga lasts for 3,600 celestial years, or 1,296,000 years of our time. And there is again gradual deterioration and low qualities, they become more prominent. And this leads humanity to the third age, right? Dwapara Yuga, or the Bronze Age. And in this age, about half of humanity is dominated by lust, greed, and other similar qualities, right? At the start of Dwapara Yuga, people live for 1,000 years, but life expectancy, it gradually diminishes, right? And by the end of the period, it's close to 100 years. So Dwapara Yuga, it lasts for 2,400 celestial years, and that's 864,000 years of Bhumandala for time. And it's followed by Kali Yuga, like Jai. And this is the last era of the cycle, like the era we are living in. So according to astronomical calculations, this age started at 3012 before Christ. And that's exactly the time that Krishna left this world. So the Surya Siddhanta describes a particular inauspicious alignment of planets that happened at the start of this era. So modern calculations, they confirm these alignments. It confirms that it really happened at this time that is described in the Vedas. So that's another thing that the Vedas agree with modern science. So during Kali Yuga, humanity slowly degrades, right? And as beings from the lower realms, they get the opportunity to take birth on our planet to accumulate a new set of karma. And this is also the shortest of the 4 eras. It lasts for only 1,200 celestial years. And this is 432,000 years of our time. So it's narrated that by the end of this period, Kalki comes, right? The avatar Kalki comes, and he destroys the oppressive kings and soldiers who at that time will be no more than plunderers of the poor citizens, and he creates the conditions for the beginning of a new cycle. And then under the guidance of great sages from previous ages, and who wait, for the end of Kali Yuga in Badarikashrama, there with Vyasadeva, humanity is restored to its original state. And then a new Satya Yuga starts, right? Marking the beginning of a new cycle. So the cycles of Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga, they go on cyclically, just like the seasons of the year. And each complete cycle of 4 eras is called a Divya Yuga. And it lasts for a total of 12,000 celestial years or 4.32 million years of Bhumandala, right? Of our time. It may seem like a very long period, but it's actually just a moment in the, cosmic scale of time, right? It's described that the inhabitants of Swargaloka, they live for 10,000 celestial years, and that's 3.6 million years, right? Quite a lot. So from there, we can see that not only the living standard, but also the perception of time on different planets of the cosmos differ, right? It's different. So that what is almost like a complete, like universal cycle for us is just a lifetime for them, right? So 1 year in Bhumandala, right, the intermediate planetary systems, equals 1 day for the demigods. Therefore, like 1 year for the demigods, 300 years in Bhumandala, right? And again, revising, Satya Yuga lasts for 4,800 years of the demigods, Treta Yuga 3,600, Dwapara Yuga 2,400, Kali Yuga 1,200, and a Divya Yuga, complete cycle of the four yugas, lasts for 12,000 years of the demigods or 4,320,000 years in Bhumandala, right? Okay, then we have the Manvantara cycles. It's a bigger cycle. So the Manvantara is the cycle that more directly affects the demigods, right? So a Manvantara is composed of 71 Divya Yugas, and it lasts for a total of 852,000 celestial years or 306,720,000 years of Bhumandala, right? Quite long. So the events at the end of a Manvantara are more dramatic than the events of at the end of Kali Yuga because it resonates all over the cosmos. Kali Yuga is just here in your planet and other intermediate planets. It doesn't affect the demigods. But the cycle of Manvantara, it affects everyone, both the demigods and the inhabitants of the lower planets. So all the devas, led by Manu, they stay in their posts by a period of a single Manvantara, right? This period of 306 million years, right? When this period is concluded, they are promoted to Maharloka, right? They go up to the next planetary system. And then a new Manu, as well as a new generation of demigods, they take their places. So during this time, there are many disturbances in the universe, and it takes some time until things go back on track. So during this period, life on most planets it ceases almost completely, and everything's not completely but almost completely, and or at least is greatly diminished. And then everything starts again with the advent of a new Manu who receives the mission of repopulating the universe with all the different species of life. And this period of transition is called Manvantara Sanja, and it lasts for 1.728 million years, right? It's the same period as Satya Yuga. So you see, in a Manvantara, there are 71 complete cycles of Divya Yugas, right? And then at the end of the last Divya Yuga, then the process of transition from one Manu to the other starts. But this period is not instantaneous. It takes almost 2 million years. And during this period, there is, a lot of anomalies in the universe. So 71 Divya Yugas, right? Complete cycles of 4 yugas. They form a Manvantara, right? This 306.72 million years or 852,000 years of the demigods, right? Manvantara. And then 14 Manvantaras together with the Sanjas, these transitional periods, they form a day of Brahma, right? And that's 4.32 billion years, right? The same as the duration of his night. And so we have these numbers out here on the on the screen, right? Otherwise, it would be very difficult to follow this explanation with all these numbers, right? This we have to see to understand. So one Divya Yuga, right? So again, one Divya Yuga, right? 4 yugas, 4.32 million years, 12,000 celestial years. One Manvantara, 71 Divya Yugas. These are 306.72 million years or 852,000 celestial years. And one Kalpa, or a day of Brahma, 4.32 billion years. Remember, when we say a day of Brahma, we are speaking only about the day, right? 12 hours. There is the night also. That is the same duration. So 306 of such days and nights, they form one of his years, right? And 50 of such years form a pararda. Brahma lives for 2 of such parardas, and thus his life is divided into 2 halves, right? And this is mentioned on verse 311:34 of Bhagavatam. Says there, quote, 100 years of Brahma's life are divided into 2 parts, the first half and the second half. The first half of the duration of Brahma's life is already over, and the second half is now current, right? So it gives an idea where we are in the cosmic scale of time. And there is more. There is the cosmic time, cosmic like units of time. So with this, we enter into the really, really large units of time. So 2 kalpas, a day and a night together, right? They equal 8.64 billion years. 1 pararda, 50 years of Brahma, 155.52 trillion years. 2 parardas, they equal a Mahakalpa. That's a life of Brahma, 311.04 trillion years. And then 1 Mahakalpa, a life of Brahma, equals 1 Mimesa for Lord Mahavishnu. So we should remember that we started the Mimesa, right? Here, half a second, 0.533 seconds, a little over half a second. So 1 lifetime of Brahma is 1 Mimesa, half a second for Lord Mahavishnu, right? So yeah, Mahavishnu has a different idea of time, right? So the total duration of the life of Brahma, right? It equals just 1 Mimesha, half a second for Lord Mahavishnu. And this, of course, gives us an idea of the insignificance of our limited lifespans in this material world, right? And of course, one could use these formulas to calculate the length of the kshanas and kastas and lagos and dandas of Mahavishnu, right? But I believe that what we saw up to here makes the point, right? Time for Mahavishnu is something different. Simple as that. So similarly, our universe is covered by the 7 layers, right? Earth, water, fire, air, ether, Mahatattva, and false ego. And the first layer is 10 times the diameter of the universe itself, and each successive layer has 10 times the diameter of the preceding layer. So all the universes, all these gigantic universes with all these gigantic layers, they are clustered together and they appear like atoms in a huge combination. And they are created and destroyed following these cycles of inhalation and exhalation of Mahavishnu, right? Thus, not only we live for a very insignificant amount of time, but we also are incredibly small in the universal scale, right? So we speak about insignificance, right? Okay, finishing for today. What happens at the end of each day of Brahma, right? So we have some vision a little bit similar to that. So we already studied that at the end of the creation, all the universes, they are destroyed, and all the souls, as well as the material energy, they enter into the body of Mahavishnu, following his process of inhalation, right? Okay. However, what exactly happens at the end of each day of Brahma. So there is a verse explaining that, quote, at the end of the day, under the insignificant portion of the mode of darkness, the powerful manifestation of the universe merges in the darkness of night. By the influence of eternal time, the innumerable living entities remain merged in that dissolution, and everything is silent. When one night of Brahma ensues, all the three worlds are out of sight, and the sun and the moon are without glare, just as in due course of an ordinary night. So there is night for us, there is night for the universe, right? So at the end of each day of Brahma, there is a partial destruction of the universe, right? And as a result, all planetary systems at the bottom of the universe, all the way up to Swargaloka, are completely destroyed, and all living entities, with the exception of the great sages who live in the higher planetary systems, they go to sleep in the body of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, right? So this division happens because the sages living in these higher planetary systems, they are involved in advanced spiritual activities, right? While the ordinary living beings living in the lower planetary systems, they are engaged in material activities using gross material bodies. So it is described that the sun and moon are not destroyed, but they stop providing illumination at the end of the day of Brahma. And thus everything becomes dark in a night that continues for 4.32 billion years. Okay. It's important to note that the Earth satellite, this piece of rock that, sits about 238,000 miles from Earth, and which we call the moon, right, in modern astronomy, is different from the moon that is mentioned in the Vedas. And that's a very important point, because the moon described in the Vedas is a celestial planet that is presided over by the demigod Soma, right? And the moon described in the Vedas is larger than the sun, and is situated further than the sun from our planet, right? Hundreds of millions of miles away. So it's really far. So the moon described in the Vedas also emits light, just like the stars, right? Of course, the moon that is around our planet doesn't emit light. And this is explained in the Bhagavad Gita 10:21, when Krishna says, Nakshatranam aham sasi. Amongst the stars, I'm the moon, right? Krishna says like this. So the planetary system of Swargaloka, it includes many stars that are situated relatively close to us, like in a cosmic scale, like not really close, but in terms of light years is close. So these stars, they have a nature that is also different from what is believed in modern astronomy. They emit a relatively modest amount of light instead of being powerful like the sun. So the moon described in the Vedas is the chief among such stars and shares their luminous nature. So it doesn't just reflect the light of the sun, it has also its own light. So it's different from this piece of rock that we have around our planet. It's just describing something else. So because of these differences, Prabhupada, he argued that the Apollo missions, they didn't actually reach the moon because they came to a place that is deserted, right? And filled with rock and sand. So this is not a celestial planet that is described in the Vedas. Like it's smaller than the moon that is described in the Vedas. You don't find life there, different from the moon that is a celestial planet. It doesn't emit light, different from the moon that is described in the Vedas. So it's a different place, right? So they went somewhere, but not to the same place described in the Vedas as the celestial moon. So this makes the point that the satellites orbiting our planet and the celestial moon that is described in the Vedas, they are two separate things. They are two different things. The moon around our planet, it may be some kind of gross manifestation of the celestial moon, the way the celestial moon appears in our gross plane, maybe. It could even be Rahu, as some believe, right? Prabhupada also pointed to this possibility. But anyway, the main point is to understand that these are two different objects. So the moon that orbits our planet, it is destroyed at the end of the day of Brahma, together with the planet itself, but the celestial moon remains. It's not destroyed, right? Because it's very far away. And apart from these stars that form Swargaloka, our universe includes many other stars that are situated much farther from our planet, all the way to the edge of the universe. And these stars they form the higher planetary systems of Maharloka, Tapaloka, Janaloka, and Brahmaloka, right? And many of them may not be visible to us. Maybe yes, maybe not. We don't know. And these higher stars, they also survive the devastation. They stay until the end of the universe. They are not destroyed at the end of the days of Brahma. So that's also interesting, right? So the universe that we observe, all these different stars that are actually these higher planetary systems, most of them, they are not destroyed. They will be destroyed only at the end of the life of Brahma, right? 155 trillion years more. Only the sun, the planets of the solar system, the other structures of Bhumandala, and so on, they are destroyed at the end of the day of Brahma. Okay, so how does this destruction takes place? So there is a verse for that on Srimad Bhagavatam 3:11, 30, 31. Quote, the devastation takes place due to the fire emanating from the mouth of Sankarsana, and thus great sages like Brigu and other inhabitants of Maharloka transport themselves to Janaloka, being distressed by the warmth of the blazing fire which rages through the three worlds below. At the beginning of the devastation, all the seas overflow and hurricane winds blow everything violently. Thus, the waves of the seas become ferocious, and in no time, all the three worlds are full of water. Unquote. So, at the end of the day of Brahma, there is a great fire, and thus the sages living in Maharloka, they are forced to relocate to Janaloka. So, in the Srimad Bhagavata, it is mentioned that this great fire comes from Lord Ananta, situated at the bottom of the universe. And in the Vayu Purana 238, it gives a slight different description. And it mentions there that the sun becomes red hot, like an incandescent ball of iron, and its size increases 7 times in terms of, distance to the center, right? It really becomes huge. And it scorches the Bhumandala and the heavenly planetary systems, destroying all forms of life in these places. And these two descriptions from the Vayu Purana and the Srimad Bhagavatam are not contradictory. Because it's just that the Bhagavata emphasizes the main factor, Lord Ananta, while the Vayu Purana emphasizes the secondary factor that are the changes in the sun. Two things happen simultaneously. It's just the Bhagavata emphasizes one, Vayu Purana emphasizes the other. This description of the Vayu Purana, it is interesting to mention because it matches the current theory that our sun will become a red giant in the future, right? Destroying most of the planets in our solar system. So modern estimates, they calculate that this process of the sun becoming a red giant will start between 3.5 and 5 billion years from now. They don't have an exact date. According to the Vedas, the destruction at the end of the day of Brahma will happen at about 4 billion years of our planet, of our time. And we can see that again, the dates given the Puranas, they fit the range given by modern studies. Again, they are in agreement with the Vedas, right? So it's not that the Vedas agree with modern science, and this is very important to emphasize. It's not that the Vedas agree with modern science. Modern science agrees with the Vedas because the Vedas is come before. These numbers the Vedas give to 5,000 years ago, and the numbers from modern science, they are recent. So modern science is agreeing with the Vedas, not the opposite. So Vayu Purana also mentions that after this process, right, the sun will disintegrate and it will eject gigantic luminous clouds in all directions. And this again matches the modern theory that about 150 million years of the red giant phase after it starts, the sun will explode in a large planetary nebula, right, ejecting clouds of hot plasma in all directions, right? And then the scientific theory is that after that, the sun becomes a white dwarf. And a white dwarf, in scientific theory, it emits very, very little light. And again, this matches the description of darkness during the night of Brahma. So interesting how these two descriptions are similar, right? So the main difference between modern theories and the Puranas is that modern theories, they predict that the universe will continue indefinitely until the sun and all stars exhaust their fuel and the universe just becomes like a dark, cold wasteland, right? But the Puranas, they give a more optimistic revelation, right? Showing that not only the stars will continue shining for a much longer period of time, like until the end of the life of Brahma, but our solar system will be recreated at the start of the next day of Brahma. So all these numbers and details are very strong proof that the superior nature of the knowledge of the Vedas. Because, how could the sages, living in the forest 5,000 years ago, they could come to numbers that are so close to modern estimates without access to any kind of modern equipment, right? Scientists, they come to these numbers because they have telescopes, they have computers, they have all kinds of equipment, right? And then, using all of these tools, they can come to these numbers. The Vedas, they give numbers that are more exact than the scientific numbers and were made, no, were written by sages that didn't have any equipment at all. So how it's possible, right? So the only possible explanation is that the knowledge of the Puranas is received from superior sources. This proves that, right? Just one small observation is that when we calculate dates, we compare the dates from the Vedas with dates given from modern science, we need to multiply all the dates, all the numbers given in the Vedas per 2. This is there is a formula for that. It's called Siddhara's factor of 2. So it's kind of because no, that's a little bit complicated. We will see later in the course, but just for you to keep in mind from where these numbers that I'm mentioning they come. There is a law for that. You need to multiply the numbers given the Puranas per 2, then you get numbers according to the years, according to time in your gross reality. Okay, and then we have next topic, finishing life of Brahma. So, just like us, Brahma lives for 100 years, right? Jai. The difference is just that his years are a little longer than our years. But apart from that, it's the same, 100 years. So the life of Brahma is divided in two halves, right? Parardas. The first half is already over, and now we are in the second half. So the first day of the life of Brahma was called Brahma Kalpa, and that's the millennium Brahma appeared. And the second day is called Padma Kalpa because that's the millennium where the first creation happened. The current millennium is called Varaha millennium, and that's because Lord Varaha appeared. But is also called Padma Kalpa because that's the millennium that the creation again happens following the complete destruction at the end of the first half of the life of Brahma. So the whole life of Brahma equals just one Mimesha, right? Half a second for Lord Mahavishnu, right? And then again, so we have 4 verses here of the Bhagavatam that describe that. That's from 3:11:34 to 38. So 100 years of Brahma's life are divided into 2 parts, the first half and the second half. The first half of the duration of Brahma's life is already over, and the second half is now current. In the beginning of the first half of Brahma's life, there was a millennium called Brahmakalpa, wherein Lord Brahma appeared. The birth of the Vedas was simultaneous with Brahma's birth. The millennium which followed the first Brahma millennium is known as the Padmakalpa, because in that millennium the universal lotus flower grew out of the navel reservoir of the water of the personality of Godhead, Hari. O descendant of Bharata, the first millennium, in the second half of the life of Brahma, is also known as Varaha millennium, because the personality of Godhead appeared in that millennium as the Hog incarnation. The duration of the two parts of Brahma's life is above mentioned, is calculated to be equal to 1 mimesha, less than a second, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unchanging and unlimited, and is the cause of all causes of the universe. So these verses, they describe all these points. So, although time controls everything that is material, time is under the complete control of the Lord, right? Similarly, time controls everyone who is under the body's conception of life, from lower animals to demigods. But it doesn't control pure devotees of the Lord, right? Because they live in the transcendental platform. Haribol. So now last one for today. This is a short topic, the size of the universe. This we will discuss in more detail later, but this is just an introduction because the two last verses of this chapter mention it. So the last two verses of this chapter, 11th chapter, they describe the dimensions of the universe, right? So these is 10. Now is 3, 11, 14, 41. So, quote, this phenomenal material world is expanded to a diameter of 4 billion miles as a combination of 8 material elements transformed into 16 further categories, within and without, as follows. The layers or elements covering the universes are each 10 times thicker than the one before, and now the universes clustered together appear like atoms in a huge combination. So Bhumandala, right, the earthly planetary system, is just 4 billion miles in diameter. And this is a size that is now roughly the scale of our solar system, according to modern astronomy. Not very big in the universal scale. So we can't access other parts of Bhumandala because these realms, they exist in high dimensions, right? But it is described that qualified human beings from previous ages, they were able to access these different realms that comprise it. However, when we speak, no, for advanced human beings, it's possible to go horizontally, right, to the other parts of Bhumandala. But when we speak about going up, right, to the higher planetary systems, the trip can't be completed by just traveling in the physical planes. It demands a change of consciousness, right? Only someone who has a level of consciousness similar to the demigods and great sages, they can go up and visit their planetary systems. So it is described that Arjuna, he could visit the celestial planets, and he even went all the way to the causal ocean together with Krishna. But we can understand that no, that was possible because Arjuna is a pure devotee, right? For normal people, that's not possible. Apart from the universe created by Brahma, our universe also includes the coverings of elemental earth, water, air, fire, sky, ego, and Mahatattva, right? So each covering is 10 times larger than the previous, right? So according to the measurements given in the Puranas, the coverings, they extend to a scale similar to what in modern astronomy is calculated as the size of our galaxy, right? Something similar in scale. But it may extend much further than this, right? Covering all the observable universe and beyond. Why? Because it demands a shift in consciousness, right? Because it demands this shift in consciousness, the distance to the higher planetary systems, like Swargaloka, Maharloka, and so on, when calculated in terms of physical distance, it becomes practically infinitely big because not just physical distance, right? It's also change in consciousness. So our universe is thus simultaneously relatively small, right? This is 4 billion miles of Bhumandala, but also infinitely big when we take this vertical dimension going up to the higher planets. And so therefore, our universe that is described in the Vedas, it includes not only our solar system, but all the galaxies and stars and everything that we see in the sky, right? And this is just one universe. That's just our universe, right? This is not the complete material manifestation. There are millions of other universes around, like clustered, like atoms. Like that's what nowadays they call multiverse. That's basically the universe mentioned in the Vedas. So again, you see, modern science is starting to agree with what the Vedas say, with these different recent theories. Okay, so that's it for today. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much. I think that's already, everyone is satisfied for today. Quite a long explanation, so many numbers, but I hope, this point about time and the way, and especially the way that Bhagavatam describes time, is more clear for you now. And of course, we will continue, seeing much more details about the universe. So all these points, they show how the Bhagavatam, it has actually it offers a more complete view of reality than modern science, right? Because modern science, like I said, it describes only the physical, right? And even this, it's not like perfectly described. But anyway, it describes only the physical. While the Vedas, it describes also the metaphysical, right? What exists behind this physical manifestation. So it includes, higher dimensions and subtle realms. It includes the soul, it includes the creation and the causes for the creation and the reasons for the creation, and so on. So it's actually a very complete knowledge. But of course, the point is about understanding it, right? If we don't understand, it doesn't help much. So that's what we are trying to do now, right? To understand all this high philosophy that the Bhagavatam brings. So, Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Gaura Premanande. Vivo. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.